Welcome to the farm. I call it the farm, and I want to talk about why today a little bit. Who's felt anything today? Who's noticed anything today about the farm? Or does anybody want to say something they've noticed that they've liked, that's caught their attention? You took your shoes off and felt the wood chips, the dirt, yeah? You feel gratitude? That makes me feel good. Thank you. This is helping me not be nervous. Community. You feel that? Inspired. That's nice.
Authentic. It seemed like every talk had a certain type of authenticity.
It did, didn't it? We've connected today, haven't we? It's my love that brought you here. It's your love that brought you here. It's the love of my great-great-grandfather, James, who came all the way from Denmark to homestead here almost 150 years ago. Life is here. Can you feel it? There's life here. We tried to clean up for you guys. There's still bird shit on the wall back there. Those chickens didn't get fed. But we did the best that we could because we wanted you to feel something. This is my home. This is where my life started. I've lived here almost my whole life. And it's a place that I love. When I grew up here, we were alfalfa farmers. We grew food for animals. And this barn was designed to store that food. And now we grow vegetables because there's more people than animals, or people that act like animals. I don't know. When I grew up out here, you could look that way a mile and there was no people. You could look that way for 10 miles and there was no people. You could look that way for 5 miles and there was no people. Imagine what it looked like when I was a boy growing up on this farm, playing in this barn. We grow vegetables now, and this is one of the favorites. We grow thousands and thousands of these, and we love to share them. It's kind of my play. It's something that's play for me. But as much as I like to share gourds and pumpkins, what I feel like I want to do more and more is to try to peel back the layers a little bit. Try to get down to the essence of what's going on here. Some people call it the why. Some people call it their non-negotiables, picking on you. But I like to peel it back a little bit. You know, when this is called a Swan Gourd, and when it was first growing out in the fields, when we pick them in the fall, they're green and they're soft, and you can cut them with a knife. But over time, the layers around us start to get a little bit harder, don't they? And that's how this one is too. It's hard. I had to cut it with my saw. I have one on my Leatherman. I cut it. I like to peel back the hard layers. I like to see what's inside. Can you see what's inside? What's inside the hard layers are seeds. And what's inside a seed? It's life. Where did the first one come from? The first gourd seed. We don't know. It's magical. I think it's a gift. Inside this seed is life. And we're going to plant these. We don't bury them. We lovingly lay them to rest under the soil. Just this week is when we start to plant all our pumpkins. And the only thing it takes for this seed to start to grow is warmth. Now, we talk about a lot of complicated things, right? We make acronyms, and we try to have our affirmations, and we try to meditate, and we try to do all these things that help us to quiet our mind. But the reality is, the only thing that it takes to ignite the warmth within us, or to life within us, is warmth. Warmth makes life, and life is infectious. Life is infectious. There's life on this farm. We just have to peel back the layers. There's life in you. We just have to peel back the layers and let the sun warm us. The funny thing about the sun on a seed is that it can't even see it because we planted it. But it can feel it, and it wants to grow. And it spontaneously changes. Spontaneously changes. How hard is change in your life? Has change ever been super hard in your life? Raise your hand if it's hard to change. When we know what's within us and we know what warms us, we change spontaneously. And we have the strength to push up against the weight of the world. We put the weight of the world on top of it. And we can push up, and we begin to grow. I wanted to peel back the layers a little bit of this barn where we are today. I talked about bird shit. That made me feel good. But over there in the corner of the barn, there used to be an old piece of metal attached to the wall where we would tie our horses when we were kids. And we would brush them, and we would saddle them. My dad taught me right over there. I could feel their warmth. I could smell their musty fur. And they would shake. Not too far from there, just about where you're standing right there with your beautiful white coat, my wife Hillary here stood one day. It was 6 months after we lost a little baby girl, not long after she was born. She lived for 13 days. And she was wearing her Sophie sweater. It was a blue sweater with little pink flecks all over in it, and she wore it all the time. And she stood there with a baby goat that wasn't doing so well. And I watched her take off her sweater and wrap that little goat in her Sophie sweater, knowing that it would die, and it did. I was 15 years old. And I could drive a truck like nobody's business. And we had this big machine called a bale wagon. It could hold 160 bales. And I would back it into the barn and then tip it up and make a stack. Sounds fun, but it's not super easy. And one day, my dad just happened to be in the barn. He was in a wheelchair. And he was watching me. And I backed it up. And I set it back so masterfully, and I pulled away just right. And I looked over at him for approval. He was just about right there. And he said with a smile, "You're still an amateur." This Christmas, I walked out of my house to feed the animals. And they were calm. And it was a calm morning. And so I climbed up on the straw stack. There was straw here then. To sit next to Snow, our white cat. Because I'd seen her sitting there for weeks to greet the morning sun. And on Christmas morning, I wanted to see what that felt like. And it warmed me. It warmed everything. But it's not always been like that. Growing up on this farm, it was work, work, work. Get shit done, right? We had to work. My dad would say, "Don't just stand there looking wise, do something." And we did it in the fields every day. But I remember the one day that I became aware of my purpose, for what I loved. And that didn't happen in the fields. It happened in this house right here where I now live. In the south, behind the south window. I sat on my dad's wheelchair next to his bed. He was paralyzed from the chest down. His hands didn't work. He could raise his arms. And we were talking. Now, this didn't happen very often because I was scared to death of my dad. Not because he was mean, because I didn't want to disappoint him. I liked to take his orders because I was his back, and I was his legs, and I was his hands. And he was the brains. And I remember sitting there on a peaceful evening. This was I don't know if something was different. He was dying of leukemia. And we got to talking about the farm. We talked about this bloody Bangor highway. You see that? 1994, they gave us two choices. We could either let them buy the land from us, or we could have them send us a check. Those were our two choices. And like farmers do, we complained a lot. Does anybody know a farmer? They complain a lot. They complained a lot. And as those complaint sessions go, eventually you kind of run out of juice, right? Your pain body gets all filled up and you don't know what to do. And there's that moment of silence. And I remember looking out the window at the moon rising, away from my dad. And I heard him say, "But boy, haven't we loved it? Hasn't it been good?" I was still looking at the moon when I replied through my tears, "It was good. And I do love it." And that moment I was his, and he was mine. And it didn't matter what we were growing in the fields. It wasn't the alfalfa we were sentimental about. It was life. The life that we share. And it filled me up. It warmed me. And I started to grow. I went away to college, and I got a couple degrees, and I traveled some. But those feelings brought me back here. Because I knew what I had to do. I had to share it. Not the food. Not the open land. I had to share life. I had to figure out a way how to warm people up. I had to find life. It's that thing that we talk about. If anyone ever says to you, it's important to know where your food comes from. Have you ever heard that before? That phrase is kind of like one of those phrases. Why is it important to know where your food comes from? Because then you know where life comes from. And then you know where you come from. You know where change comes from. The easy kind. You know what causes growth. You know what to believe in. You know what to follow. You know what to do. This farm is a receptacle. Today it's a witness. It's real because it can't be anything but real. We're the only ones that come up with that crazy stuff. The farm doesn't know how to be not real. And it's a real receptacle. It's a granary for the fruit of life. And when we feel hungry, have you ever felt hungry even after you ate? Huh? Who's felt hungry even after they ate? Like a lot. And they kept eating, and then they still felt hungry, and then they went to bed hungry. Who went to bed hungry at midnight after a whole bowl of ice cream? Anybody? Man was not meant to live on bread alone. You can't. And farms are more than food. I'll scream it. Farms are more than food. Believe it. Don't say, we need farms in our community because if the trucks stop running, then what's going to happen? Guess what? My farm would be as empty as Walmart shelves in about 5 seconds. I had dreamed that I was on the top of the barn and there was fire raining down from heaven and all the people were coming down off of the Bangor Highway like zombies and eating all my food. And I had a big 50 cal to protect my food. But farms are more, that was dramatic, wasn't it? I just pissed off the bodybuilder. I don't want to do that. I don't know how long I'm going here. But farms are more than food. They're a bowery for the fruit of life. You can taste it better when it's fresh. Sure, it's more nutritious. Sure, your body's going to love it better. But there's more life in it. And we need more life in our life. We need more real life in our life. My invitation to you tonight is to see. I've tried to decide for a long time what makes a farmer. When I talk to some farmers, I've been with them, and some farmers have 2,000 acres, and they call my farm a cute little farm. Hey, look at the cute little farmer, you know? But these cute little tractors, you know? You got a cute little 100 horsepower tractor. I got 500 horsepower, right? Farm needs to be seen. I'm going to ask you something right now. How does this farm survive? This is 5 generations deep. And I want to keep it because I don't want to be the guy, you know. I don't want to be the 5th guy that let this thing go. But even more, I want you to feel the life. What are we going to do? Not when the trucks stop running, but when we can't feel the warmth anymore. When we can't visit a place. When there's no more space left in our hearts, in our lands, in our communities. A farmer is someone that can see. A farmer is someone who can see life. Be a farmer with me. Thank you.